The mudslide buried his car. He rolled down the window in a panic and reached out to feel how thick the mud was, but the slurry rushed inside and he slammed the window shut. Before he could gather himself, the sunroof cracked open. In a flurry, he tore out a roll of tape and tried to seal the crack, but that flimsy tape couldn't withstand the pressure. Just as he was about to be completely swallowed, he noticed a steering wheel lock tucked under the seat. He yanked it out and wedged it against the sunroof. To his surprise, that old useless lock actually held the mud back. He stared at the sunroof, terrified the glass would shatter, and only breathed a long sigh of relief when it seemed to hold. Then, because he relaxed, he did something stupid. He grabbed his water bottle and gulped it down until it was nearly empty, only then realizing it was his only life-saving water. Panic and regret hit him. He didn't know how long he'd be trapped, and no water could mean no survival. In the end, he drained what was left. Next, he frantically rummaged through the car for anything useful, but everything he found was useless. Then the sunroof began to leak. Droplets fell into the cabin. He leaned forward and tried to drink directly, but it was too slow. So he folded his bank card into a little funnel, jammed it into the mouth of the water bottle, and clipped the funnel to the steering wheel lock so the trickle would go straight into the bottle. That solved his drinking problem at last, and he slapped his hands in relief. He even kept his urine in the glove box as a backup, but a new problem came fast. The air in the car was running out and his breathing grew labored. If he didn't do something, he'd suffocate. He dismantled the folding chair, pulled out the hollow metal tubes, used his nail clippers to punch a tiny hole in a bottle cap, threaded some twine through it, and jammed the cap into the tube. He figured he could make a breathing tube. Then he straightened a length of wire and bored a small hole through the sunroof cover, pushing the metal tube upward. The mud was so thick that a 6-foot tube, about 1.8 meters, wouldn't reach the outside. He panicked and attached a second section, pushing on. Even with 2 pieces in, it still wasn't long enough. His breaths got shallower and fear took over. He ripped out the last tube and pushed with everything he had, but this time it wouldn't penetrate. Something seemed to block it. Desperate, he used the car jack under the tube, but the jack hit its limit and still couldn't break through. With no other choice, he patted his shoulder with a towel and shoved his body against the pipe. The pain nearly knocked him out, but then he felt the pressure give, and the tube finally punched through the mud and popped out. He shoved a wire through, pried off the bottle cap, and when he craned his head forward, he actually saw a sliver of light. He shouted and whooped like he'd found another life, then pressed his mouth to the tube and greedily inhaled fresh air, as if he'd been brought back to life. After he recovered, he kept looking for a way to signal for help. Suddenly, he had an idea. He dug out an old newspaper from the car, rolled it into a tube, jammed it into the end of the metal pipe, and struck a match to light it.